Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us at AIMA's 42nd National Management Convention. Ladies and gentlemen, member of the audience, distinguished invitees, may I request you all to kindly be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming on stage AIMA President, Mr. H.M. Nerurkar, AIMA Vice President, Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, Mr. Jaijit Bhattacharya from KPMG, and AIMA Director General, Ms. Rekha Sethi on the stage with a huge round of applause. May I now take the opportunity of inviting Ms. Rekha Sethi, Director General AIMA, to give her introductory remarks.
Good morning, Mr. Nerurkar, Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, Jaijit, ladies and gentlemen. The minister is coming, so this doesn't mean, since we've started, it doesn't mean that he's not going to be here, but in the interest of time and sticking to our schedule today, we decided to start without him. So a very good morning to all of you. It is my privilege to introduce you to the inaugural session of the 42nd National Management Convention. Thank you so much for joining us today on this very special occasion for AIMA and for AIMA members, and helping us support AIMA's efforts to promote excellence in management thinking and practice. We look forward to having the Honorable Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, with us. He's just about to start from his residence, so should be with us in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And it's delightful to see a hall full of so many friends and people close to AIMA here today. I want to thank all my past presidents, especially for joining us on this occasion. They have always been a source of strength to all of us in the Secretariat, our council members, our local management associations. We have close to 150 local members from the associations joining us today, which is a remarkable number, and I want to thank them for it. I want to thank a lot of my friends from overseas, Philip Erzinger, Johannes Berchtold from the St. Gallen Foundation. They are great partners to have, and welcome to AIMA. Dr. Frank Richter, the founder of Horace's, the Global Visions Company. It's good to have you here with us. Our friends from across the border, Amin Hashwani. I can see Asfar sitting there with all our friends from Pakistan, Amara and all the others. Welcome to India. And a very special welcome for the first time friends we have made from China, represented here by Albert and Mr. Gao. Welcome. Would you like to stand up? And I'd urge you to meet our delegates. They have a lot of interest in doing business with India. So do spend some time with our friends from China also. Ladies and gentlemen, AIMA has been the catalyst of management capacity building in the country since its foundation in 1957. However, in 1971, the association decided to create an event where management leaders from all over the country could gather and deliberate on the most urgent challenges and opportunities for the country. Thus, the National Management Convention was born, and in the 4 decades since then, AIMA has built the NMC into a prime platform for a comprehensive dialogue on Indian economic progress, policies, and prospects. The NMC this year is focusing on the great expectations that people have from India's leaders and the strategies for meeting these expectations. There has been a surge of optimism and ambition in India, and it is important to harness the high expectations for change and progress. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all once again for joining us today, and with these words, may I now request Mr. H.M. Nerurkar, President AIMA, to deliver his welcome address. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Jaijit, Bhattacharya, Mr. Sunil, Kant, Munjal, Rekha, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's really a pleasure to see Mr. Bhattacharya here. He has a varied experience in advising government on infrastructure projects, and we really thank you for agreeing to share some of your learnings with us. Welcome to the convention. I am pleased to welcome my colleague Sunil Kant Munjal, Vice President AIMA, Joint MD Hero Motor Corporation, and Chairman Hero Corporate Services, and of course, an old friend, and Rekha Sethi, Director General AIMA. A very warm welcome to past presidents of AIMA, members of the AIMA councils, the local management associations, delegates, media, and eminent friends of AIMA who has joined us in this convention for the NMC. A very special welcome to our friends from Pakistan and China, who on our invitation kindly agreed to be here, and I am sure you will enjoy your stay here. Special welcome once again to Johannes and Philip from St. Gallen and Frank from Horasis. Thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, this convention marks another important milestone of AIMA's progress towards making Indian management the best in the world. It is another occasion where all the stakeholders in Indian economy gather together to assess country's readiness to overcome its immediate challenges and forge strategies for its uninterrupted growth. While the financial crisis of 2009 is behind us, the economic uncertainty still prevails. South Korea, China, who are the export powerhouses of the world and are good indicators of global economic trend, we find that this year the trade has shrunk. Exports of South Korea by 15%, China by 5% year on year. Even exports from developed nations like Britain and US are down. This is certainly showing, while this is in dollar terms, not in volume terms, and one can say that yes, in terms of dollars it has gone down because of the fall in the energy prices, commodity prices, raw material prices, and because of that, its impact on the manufacturing goods, and of course the strong dollar. But even in volume terms, the trade has gone up only by something like 1.3%, knowing fully well that for last 20 years, the average has been something like 5 or 6%. So situation is certainly not straightforward, and there are certain parts of the world where things are not really moving the way it should. Which means that for us, the global economy is not going to be of a great help. And we have to be mostly on our own to solve our own problems. India is a reasonably best bet for long-term high growth, as other fast-growing emerging economies will take time to structurally remodel their economies for the growth. Indian economy has stabilized during the past year and is once again growing at 7.5% rate, up from 5% a year ago. The fiscal deficit has come down, is somewhere around 4%, and that has expanded the room for private investment. The inflation, which has kept the cost of money high for nearly 5 consecutive years, is now at the acceptable levels, and this morning also you saw good news about the interest rates. The current account deficit has fallen to historic low levels, despite weak global markets and India's dependence on imports of energy, thanks to favorable oil prices. So India is a much happier situation compared to other emerging economies. However, we have our own issues, which are fortunately not structural, at least not yet. If India can resolve the entangled web of politics and economics, India's already high growth can shoot up to double digits. If India could make it easy to do business, an enormous amount of pent-up entrepreneurial energy will be released into the system. In fact, if India could clear the way for hundreds of projects that are stuck due to legal and political issues, the country's economic growth would expand both vertically and horizontally. Clearly, the expectations are high, and the country's leadership, both in government as well as in the private sectors, needs to deliver now. It is once in a lifetime opportunity or once in a century opportunity for us to surge ahead and become a global leader in productivity and prosperity. The government is trying to do its bit by sorting out macroeconomic fundamentals so that investor confidence in the Indian economy grows. The government has cut down its expenditure and increased its investment budget. The Prime Ministers and the ministers in charge of economic ministries are scouting for FDI around the world. The Make in India is a great initiative, and everything needs to be done to make it a success. It is also credible that the government is pushing forward with capacity building programs like Skill India, Digital India, and Jan Dhan Yojana. These programs would make India's new generations more productive, entrepreneurial, and also create a huge consumption base for economy to grow. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you once again, and I am confident that you will cherish the celebration during this annual event. I will now request Mr. Jaijit Bhattacharya, Partner, Infrastructure and Government Services, KPMG, to deliver the theme address and set the context for the convocation. Thank you.
Good morning, delegates. Good morning, Mr. Nerurkar, Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, Rekha. It's interesting to have a session on leadership in times of high expectation. It seems for the last couple of thousands of years we have been discussing the same issues. What is leadership? How should we manage high expectations? As we've been encapsulated in this three-letter word, Dil Mange More, which is popularized by Captain Vikram Batra. You always have high expectations. If you conquer one peak, you want more peaks to be conquered. If you're having high growth rate, you want higher growth rate. We have the Chinese friends sitting here. We're getting depressed at 6.5% growth rate on a base of $10 trillion. When in the history of mankind did we have a 6.5% plus growth rate on a $10 trillion economy? And still we want more. And I think that's what drives us humans. And managing that becomes the challenge that we're looking at. Some of the things of the issues that we grapple with leadership also intertwines with leadership and with innovation. And I was looking at this batch that was given by this session, and typically I've had this problem that the batch flips, and therefore lots of innovations have gone into it and how to make sure the batch doesn't flip. And what I observed, what has happened is they have printed the same thing on both sides, and that's innovation, and that's leadership. Looking at a problem and finding out different ways of solving it. And that's thinking out of the box, and that's what we need when we are in a situation when we don't know what's going to happen next year, next quarter, next week. The situation that we are in is the expectations is that there will be high growth rate. We see that over the horizon that high growth rate is probably coming in. As Mr. Nerurkar had mentioned, the commodity prices are low. But also what's happening is the global growth rates are low. Global demand is low. And the last count, the domestic economy is not really growing at the rate that is being expected, although there is high expectation that it will. And that high expectation is getting translated to our corporate pressures. So yesterday, the interest rates has been cut down. So on September 29th, interest rates are cut down. September 30, the H1 results are to be out. And are we saying there'll be more growth happening in September 30 because on September 29, the interest rates have gone down? How many of you are expecting a very good H1? Can I have some show of hands in terms of how many of you are expecting a high growth rate in H1? Quite a few. And that's a green shoots coming up. I'm surprised you raised the hand because there's supposed to be a silent period, but could you raise your hand? But what keeps happening is that we say the green shoots are coming. For last couple of years, we have been saying the green shoots are coming up. But we don't see the green shoots translating into flowering bamboos. And the expectation is that we'll have tropical forests on a desert land. And therefore, that's the gap between the expectations and what's really happening on the ground. And every quarter, we see the green shoots, and we see some of the hands going up. I would roughly say about 10% of the hands went up. And that's great. When we again come back and look at the Indian scenario, of course we are growing, and we have been very happy that we have grown in this year we'll be growing faster than our friends from across the border. But the sobering thought is that even at a lower growth rate, the actual growth added by China is 5 times the growth added by India. I'll just take a pause for the Honorable Minister to take his seat. So who are the stakeholders when we look at growth? We have stakeholders as our shareholders who want a far higher price, a far higher return. We have our customers. We also have our vendors and responsibility to the vendors because we have promised a higher growth rates which will increase their sales. We also got citizens as our stakeholders. But if you look at the inheritance that we have had, manufacturing has still been less than 12.89% of the economy. And without that going up, we can't be having jobs, we can't be having a higher bottom line, we can't be having profits, we can't discharge to the expectations that have been built up. And on top of it, we've got the march of technology coming in where we foresee a large amount of job destruction to happen. And we have seen that the government has taken up very innovative steps in trying to check the job destruction, in trying to create more jobs, and in trying to bring in some semblance of rationality to the economy by increasing the share of manufacturing. And we're glad to note that the government has come out with programs such as Make in India, Digital India, Skill India, and they're so interlinked. If we don't have a skilled India, we can't manufacture anything. And if we manufacture something, it has to be consumed. And programs like Digital India ensure that the consumption happens because of the drumbeat that the government is putting in. A few years ago, I would say about just 2 years ago, in fact, India was almost a joke in BRICS. And people were saying, let's replace India with Indonesia and BRICS. Now it seems that India is a pillar of BRICS. I think that's the leadership that we have seen coming in the government as an organization. I think that's a good learning for all of us who run our own individual organizations on how to go beyond the constraints and the problems and come out with the drumbeats and the leadership that is needed to bring in the transformation. And beyond that, when we look at the brass tacks, it's not just the visioning at the top, but when we look at brass tacks, we see multiple risks that are there in large projects. And in fact, if I look at the Honorable Minister's own ministry, many projects have been stuck because of rating risks, because of revenue risk, because we don't know whether revenue will come out in terms of what has been expected. There have been partial completion risks. We don't know whether the project that has started will complete or not, and therefore the interest component of debt will start going up, and it will make the project stretched out because whoever is invested has to bring in more money just to service the interest component. And very deftly, the ministry under the able leadership of the Honorable Minister has been able to come out with instruments such as hybrid PPP, partial risk completion guarantee, and so on and so forth to overcome these challenges. And therefore, leadership is not just at the theoretical level, but also changing it and bringing it down to addressing the tactical issues. One of the views of leadership is very well encapsulated in this picture of Vishnu lying on the snake, the Sheshnag, and Brahma covering behind Vishnu, looking at the universe, and able to make sense of the universe only through the eyes of Maya. So what Brahma is able to do is stay in his comfort level, interpret the universe in terms of what Maya is able to show to Brahma. And I guess many a times we get in the same trap, where we are able to see the organization and the issues and the problems in terms of our existing constraints, our existing frameworks, and we only see a small portion of the universe, instead of going ahead and creating our own universes. And we have seen that happening in e-commerce, we have seen that happening in many other sectors, where segments that did not exist was created because someone saw behind and beyond the constraints and the frameworks that have been dictated to us. And that is leadership, and that's what we are seeing happening now. And when we create these new universes, that's when the organizations grow, that's when the economies grow. If we take a couple of more examples, and I think the minister is already here, so I'll make it really short. If you look at the Gandhi's Dandi March, did Mahatma Gandhi really know what will happen at the end of the march? Did he really know he'll complete the march? Did he really know what will happen if he pick up the salt? But he kind of knew that he'll be able to change the game. And that's creation of a new universe. And that's what we need to do in each of our organizations. And therefore, the biggest resource for leadership is basically you or us. When Hanuman was supposed to jump and reach Lanka, because of the curse he had, he forgot how to jump. All his powers were taken away. And Jambavan had to remind him. I'm sorry for some of the friends from outside who wouldn't know the mythological background to it. But Jambavan had to remind that you have all the gunas. You have all the gunas to jump, but you've forgotten. You've forgotten how to jump. You've forgotten how to reach the potential that you have been designed to reach. And once Hanuman got to understand the potential he has, he could jump. I think all of us have that potential. And in summary, if I can just quote from Iqbal, खुदी को बुलंद कर इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरा रजा क्या है. Just for my friends from outside, before every time God says what your destiny will be, God comes and asks you and takes your permission, tell me what you want your destiny to be. Because you have made yourself so strong that even God has to take your permission. I think that's what leadership is. That's what would help our organizations grow. That's what would help our country go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya, for your insightful theme address. Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to welcome in our midst Mr. Nitin Gadkari, Minister of Shipping, Road Transport and Highways, Government of India, as our chief guest at the inaugural session of the 42nd National Management Convention of AIMA. May I now request the Honourable Minister and other dignitaries to light the ceremonial lamp and mark the inauguration of AIMA's 42nd National Management Convention. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sirs. May I now request the Honourable Minister to please release the convention souvenir. Thank you, sir, for doing the honors. May I now request Mr. H.M. Nerurkar, President AIMA, to please introduce and invite our chief guest for the convention for delivering the inaugural address.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker. A pragmatic and effective administrator, he has a tremendous track record in infrastructure development. During his days as the PWD minister in Maharashtra government, he played a pivotal role in decongesting Mumbai by organizing the construction of city's flyover network. And many of you who are from Bombay can now see how complicated the job must have been at that time. Especially some of the longest flyovers were really difficult one to construct and to get all the permissions for doing so. An astute strategist, he was among the pioneers of public-private partnership in highway projects. He was a key architect of Mumbai-Pune Expressway, which has become a model for other expressway projects in the country. A visionary policy maker, he was instrumental in the formation and implementation of Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, which has led to construction of all-weather roads in lakhs of Indian villages. May I request the Honorable Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, to address the convention.
Respected dignitaries on the dais and dear friends, the management is very important, either it is politics or business. Without management, it is very difficult. Someone say he is very absolutely correct that you can donate eye, but you cannot donate vision. The management and managerial skill is very important for your future, for your vision. And for the vision, the knowledge, science and technology is the power. These are very three important things: knowledge, science and technology. And conversion of knowledge, science and technology into the wealth, that is the conversion of knowledge into wealth, is the future. As India's case is concerned, we are a rich nation with a poor population. And the basic need to improve the management and appropriate vision. And one of my experience in government, particularly our administrative and bureaucratic system, we need to change attitude, approach, behavior and decision-making process. Either it is a private management or government management. The leader needs fast-track decision-making process. Today, a lot of people who are on the big post, they are not interested to take the decision. Because their argument is not taking decision is a good policy. And this is also one of the big problems. The management, the manager, either it is in corporate, either it is in government or in politics, you have to take the decisions. When I was minister in Maharashtra, I give